10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Liftoff, and the clock is starting.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And we say goodbye to our old saves as we update ourselves right into Kerbalcast episode 32, the big 9-0.
There's that majestic plume of flame behind the Saturn V.
Our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
and I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot, Biff Aldrin. Coming up in today's program,
Beta than ever. It's our review of 0.90.
and an audio letter from Orbiter,
The mission briefing that has your letters and the latest KSP news.
and another episode of A Kerbal Life,
And after the credits, we talk about Apollo 8.
which is something I have been waiting to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, literally,
Chomping at the bit.
I talked about this in the first episode.
Yeah.
It's almost like I started the podcast just to talk about Apollo 8.
Yeah.
This is, and we'll talk about this more when we hit the after the credits, but I mean, again, it is a shame that more people don't know about Apollo 8.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is, to me, it is just as significant as Apollo 11. But everybody knows Apollo 11, and a lot of people don't know Apollo 8.
I mean, it's like, without that, we wouldn't have Homer to your mobile.
That's true. That's true. Because, I walked around for a week saying that.
Yeah.
Homer to your mobile.
Yeah, you got to see his baseball.
I still cannot. Yeah. I dream about that baseball.
What's
night.
nice is episode 30 gave us a revisit of that.
Yeah.
So like anybody's like, wait, what are they talking about? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's only like, 2 episodes ago.
I still cannot figure out how the closed captioning on YouTube turned "I met Jim Lovell" into "Homer to your mobile." I guess what phonetically, does it sound the same?
Yeah, if I was drunk enough, they just sound all the same to me. So,
well, if I was drunk enough, everything would sound the same. Yeah. When I get drunk, I lose all my vowels.
Yeah.
Everything just. Well, let's get into the big news for the week. Obviously, when we were recording last week, and I think Squad did this on purpose. I think they knew we were recording.
Like, wait for it.
Yeah.
Okay, release it.
Yeah. They were like, okay, my spider sense tells me they're recording, so we're going to release update 0.90, which is how they call it, which is why we're calling it 0.90.
I'm going to call it .90.
You're going to call it .90?
The first thing I saw, .90.
I want to call it Windows 9 since that's obviously not used. But we said in the last episode, as we're recording this, the latest update has not been released. And for all we know, by the time this podcast comes out, it will be released. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was like, literally, it's like we finished recording and I posted the thing and it was like, boom, it was already out.
That's the hard part of recording on Mondays and editing and releasing on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Is like Tuesdays is whenever everything happens.
Right.
As far as like games and releases and stuff goes.
So we're a week off.
Yeah.
I will ask you straight off. Do you have any first impressions of the latest update?
So I got some playtime this week.
Okay.
And it was mainly every time there's an update, I just completely delete my old saves and I start fresh because I want to see what they intended the game to be from the very beginning.
Right.
Because if I was in the middle of an orbit around Elu, I'm not going to see sort of the beginning things.
Well, I deleted my old saves, but it wasn't because I wanted to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. As soon as the latest update loaded, and I brought up the game, it came and it said your saves are incompatible because the mods.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
that sucks.
Ironically, do you know what it was that it didn't like? Was MechJeb. It had no problem with KW rocketry.
Got mech jealous.
Yeah, I guess so. It got mechanized. But it does not like the 0.25 version of MechJeb. It doesn't like it. And I had that because of the data screens. I had that on my ships.
Yeah.
And so when it came up and tried to load my old saves, it said, sorry, you're using a mod that's not compatible.
No, there's nothing like an involuntary restart.
Yeah. But it likes KW rocketry 0.25. That worked just fine.
Okay.
And just kind of as an experiment, the Kerbal Engineering Redux for 0.25 works on 0.90.
Oh.
So I've got my data screens. I've got them through Kerbal Engineering now. But I lost both of my saves and I also lost all of my ships because I can't load them with MechJeb. So, I 0.90 reset my progress back to 0, and it also got rid of my entire quote-unquote fleet.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're both back to 0.
I didn't even check, but I don't use any mods, so mine probably ported over fine. But I just started a brand new one, didn't even look.
Yeah, because didn't you say you're trying to approach this game from the novice point of view, and so you kind of avoid mods.
That's how we started the podcast. Was I didn't know anything about the game, and I had played for 5 hours before we did episode 1.
I didn't know nothing about nothing.
So anytime they do an update, I want to start over and just see what a new player would experience and see like how they would handle it if everything made sense. And I don't use mods because anyone who's been following my progress. Because we've had some people that started around the same time I started. Right. I don't want them to all of a sudden hear about me doing something that just seems so out of the ordinary for somebody. It's like, oh, yeah, so, I was going all the way out to Moho the other day, and it's like, wait, you've only been playing for so many hours. How are you already doing that?
Yeah, that frothy chocolate drink.
Yeah. So I started off, very first thing, I thought it looked so shabby. Like, my whole Space Center looked so shabby.
Oh, yeah.
Because it needed some upgrades. And I was like, wait, why did they just make everything smaller?
Yeah. I had the same thought when I brought it up, because you've got kind of that God's eye aerial view of the Space Center. And I was going, okay, either I'm much further back or everything got much smaller. Yeah. And guess which one it was?
Yeah. And so I was clicking on those buildings, and I was getting those little pop-ups, to tell me how to play the game and stuff.
Did it take you a minute to figure out how to upgrade the buildings?
Right-clicking them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a minute, because I was like, what?
What it was is I right-clicked the screen.
Not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Not the brightest bulb in the bulb place.
There you go.
So I right-clicked the screen to move the mouse around to change the view, because I was using the arrow keys to like move and pan
I got
the view.
You. Okay.
And I used the right mouse.
And did you click on a building by accident?
Yeah, I did, and it brought that up, and I was like, oh, because I was trying to move it like you would a first-person shooter, not a first-person shooter, but like a RTS, where you'd click with a certain mouse key and you would drag it around to change your view of things.
How many times have we discovered things in this game by accident?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. How many times? Because there's been so many times when we've come in and go, oh, by accident.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're in the ship view mode and you right-click this certain panel, you can play Galaga. So
Max Maps, who is a huge fan of old classic arcade games.
Yeah.
That's right. We're giving you a shout out, Max Maps.
It's probably hidden in there somewhere.
Yeah. He's going to love the Galaga reference.
So
he might even say Homer to your mobile.
Oh. So I started messing around with it, and I was like, oh, okay, you can upgrade buildings. And at first I just thought you upgraded them to, like, anytime you'd unlock parts, it would get nicer, but no. And then I was reading each little entry for each building.
Right.
And no, like, you can carry a maximum of 30 unlocked parts in the VAB, and you need to upgrade it. And then you can, the one that got me was the administration building.
Right.
You can only have 2 contracts going at a time. So
I wondered about it. I was like, what?
Yeah, because at first I like, whenever I usually would start over, I would just start all 4 contracts, getting into orbit, breaching, however many meters, and landing a craft and all that.
I wondered if anyone had that same experience, because I literally did the same thing. I was like, yeah, I'll just select all 4 contracts, and it was like click click, and then everything whited out.
Yeah, because I can usually knock them all out with one good launch.
Right.
And so I selected 2 of them, and then the other ones just wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
They just gray out.
And I was like, why can't I? And then I left and I right clicked, and I was like, oh, I can only do 2 at a time.
Right. Until you upgrade that building.
Which it gives me an early motive to upgrade the buildings, but the cost of the buildings is also kind of high to upgrade them. So I felt a little stunted by that, because I was like, well, I can only do 2 contracts at once, and they're going to have to pay out a certain amount, and eventually I need to have enough money to where I can feel comfortable upgrading the administration building to take on more contracts. And at the same time, have enough money left over after doing that to make the ships to complete those contracts.
How did you feel about the contracts?
The newer ones are kind of neat. I haven't done too many of them, but one of them was like survey Kerbal the land, and I was like,
I liked that.
I clicked on it. I was like, this is cool, and I said, it'd be really cool though if there's a nav point marker.
And there was,
and I was like, you know what? If I click on this, does it add a point on my nav bar? Yes, it does. I was okay, this is really cool. I really like this.
I know they're in there for easy money and easy experience points. But, you know, when I went there and I got that long list of part testing, I went, oh, good God, not this again.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think it's okay if I don't know, there's some percentage of what contracts should be part testing that I would be comfortable with.
Right.
I'm not going to name it off the top of my head. I'm not exactly sure how much.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I was looking at the list of contracts, because, you know, when you start, you get like 4 basic contracts.
Yeah.
And once you knock a couple of those off, your list of contracts expands greatly. And when the first time I went in there with an expanded contract list, you know, to me, it was like, let's say, just top of my head, let's say there were 10 contracts. It seemed like 7 or 8 of them were part testing.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of like, you know, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that.
Now, would you say that seems kind of annoying because you're an experienced player? Like if you were a brand new player, would that bother you very much?
You know what? I just don't like part testing. And I suspect I would probably not like it even as a novice. Because my big gripe about part testing has always been, you know, they set parameters, which sometimes those parameters, you know, the part testing itself is not that difficult, but trying to test within the window that they establish.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's like, you know, right when you get to where you can test the part, you're outside the window that they provided for you. So you spend more time just jockeying, trying to get back into those parameters.
Yeah, it's almost as if they set, like, instead of saying maximum and minimum number of meters, if they would have set 1, like, you need to be above or below this many meters. Yeah. You know, like, for this part, if you're above 10,000 meters and going this speed, that would be something I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's fine.
You know what? That's a real good point. The atmosphere goes from, you know, it changes thickness roughly between, say, 5 and 8 kilometers. If they would make part testing, you know, say the one parameter would be you have to be, let's just say 10 kilometers.
Yeah.
If they said you had to be above 10 kilometers and then test the part, I would be fine with it.
Yeah,
but
like,
you know, but they're putting a bottom and they're putting an upper and lower limit on your altitude, and sometimes they put speed limitations on you.
Yeah.
So trying to get those two parameters lined up, I mean, I would part testing to me would be less cumbersome.
Yeah.
If it was just simply get up there, test the stupid part, come down, cash in the money, go to the bar, you know, get drunk and get thrown out.
Yeah.
You know,
So,
and lose reputation.
I think what you could do is, you know how whenever you go and you set up your strategies and you can slide them,
right?
And if you slide them a certain amount, you gain more money for a certain cost or anything like that. Like with a contract, you could take on a contract and let's say it's test the gear wheel,
right?
Test the Sepratron. So you take the contract for testing the Sepratron, and you can slide it for a number of stars. Like let's say there's a 1 star, and it's like test it at above, 10 kilometers.
Right.
And you put 2 stars, and it's test it above 10 kilometers going between this speed and this speed. And you can go 3 stars, and it would be like test this, between 10 kilometers and, 20 kilometers going this speed to this speed. So you could scale the difficulty, which would increase the payout.
Right.
Because then I would take on a bunch of small contracts. If I just needed some quick cash, take on a bunch of contracts at like 1 star, and I'm like, I just need to test.
Just load your ship up with all these different parts.
And I need to test them all at these certain times because they would have different amounts. It wouldn't be 10 kilometers for each part.
Hey, you could call it the HMS Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Just cobbled together out all these random parts.
If you needed, like the Sepratron contract would be like test above 10 kilometers.
Right.
And then the, like a...
Are you saying this as a suggestion?
No, it's not $1 million idea. But then it would be like the landing.
Hey, those are mine.
Yeah, so it'd be like test the landing legs, and it would be like 12 kilometers. Would be its measurement. And if you were to slide it up, it'd be like 12 kilometers to 24 kilometers or whatever, and then the speed. If I could do that, then I would take on a lot more parts contracts.
Right.
And if I wanted to make a lot of money, I would do a few with all like 3-star difficulty. Or if I just wanted to make some real quick cash just to make a little bit of money and gain some reputation or whatever, I could do them at 1 star.
And that might also, because by and large, if you hear one complaint about career mode, most people say, I don't like part testing.
Yeah, because there's some that don't pay out a lot and have just as many parameters as one that pays out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So if you're to have, it's like, oh, this will pay out this much. If you want to make it more difficult, it'll increase how much it'll pay out. So
that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because I mean, to me, if you could change those parameters, I think that would make part testing not quite so.
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't make it to where you could like change how many kilometers or anything.
Right.
Just like make 3 different difficulty settings.
1 kilometer.
Yeah, 1 kilometer. Spacebar, money. Done.
You know what? I would change it to where every single one of them you test it on the launch pad without even taking off.
Yeah. As long as you don't explode, you're fine.
Yeah. I would just make one giant ship, put every single part on it. I would put them all on the same stage. I would hit the space bar and then.
Wait, how do you play the game? That's how I play the game.
It would be like, easy money.
How do you think I got to the mun?
I'm in the money.
So, so trying that was neat. I launched, a very basic ship, completed those 2 contracts.
Right. I do like that the buildings. You can't just upgrade the building you want. I mean, in order to upgrade certain buildings, you have to upgrade other buildings first.
Yeah, I haven't upgraded any buildings yet.
Yeah.
Because I just don't want to spend the money because it costs enough that I don't want to lose the money to build certain things. Because where I left off in my last game,
Scrooge McNutt,
was I spent so much money on this one thing that I was like, well, if this doesn't work, I either have to revert it or I have to build another completely huge thing,
right?
Or like complete a bunch of small contracts.
Did we ever decide? Do the Kerbals themselves? Do they upgrade themselves, or do you have to do that?
Oh, with their leveling?
do they automatically level up, or do we have to?
See,
do that?
I'm not sure. My little guy leveled. Jebediah leveled whenever I launched that and completed those 2 contracts.
Because I noticed at the end it would always say, like whatever experience he got.
I'm not sure. I think they just.
Automatically.
It's not like they have skill points.
Right.
I think they level up and they're just better at certain things now, or have certain new abilities.
Wouldn't it be funny if Squad totally lost focus on the game and you could use skill points and assign mage points and
and eventually you're not going to space anymore. You're walking around killing boar. With an archery.
You could go you could go on long quests to get the one ring.
Yeah.
And Jeb would have a long beard going, "You shall not pass."
Yeah. At some point, it wasn't even about space anymore.
I know. Somebody at Squad one day would go, "Hey, I think we lost our focus.
So why are we still calling it Kerbal Space Program?"
Yeah, this has turned into a Kerbal Mage Program.
Yeah.
Which warrior class are you? I'm a rogue.
A bunch of
Boy, talk about losing our focus.
Yeah, maybe we just lost our focus there.
I think we did.
You know what? Let's make a game. Let's just cut the podcast. Little Greek knights and mages. So,
well, Kerbal the way it is basically 3 games in one. There's career, there's science, and there's sandbox.
Yeah.
I mean, Squad could
they make an MMO.
Yeah, they could go completely, World of Kerbalcraft.
Yeah.
They could, and then they could make a first-person shooter, Call of Kerbals.
Yeah. It's whenever you try to start up a game, if you never heard of it, there's how come this is so many things? It's you just buy one game and that's it,
Yeah. The next update will, instead of Sim City, you'll be Kerbal City.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's kind of what's happening now.
Yeah, I know. But,
you upgrade your buildings.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
Next, you need some waste management Kerbal yelling.
Think about it. Squad could make some big bucks here if they basically put every game that's out there, a variation of it in Kerbal Space Program.
Yeah, just make any game with Kerbals.
Yeah, you boot it up and choose one of 20 different modes to play in.
You get Kerbal Kong Country going on next. It's insanity.
Yeah.
But it's the new update, it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't
I like the aesthetics of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it just
good.
Visually looks good.
Starting up with, I'm going to go back to the contract thing. Starting up with only 2 contracts. Well, the next 2 contracts I did were explore a certain area because I couldn't get more than 2, and I wanted to try the new ones. I didn't want to do the other base 2 contracts or whatever.
If I remember right, I think upgrading to where you could get more contracts is probably the cheapest.
Yeah.
It's either the cheapest or one of the cheapest upgrades.
And unless you're like, I don't know. I don't have the proficiency of the guys who build StarCraft build orders, but I assume that's probably one of the first things you want to upgrade.
Right.
So,
well, it seems to me like if you upgrade that,
yeah,
you can probably knock out
more contracts at once.
You could probably get more money and more reputation and more science a lot faster.
Yeah, out of fewer ships.
Fewer missions.
It seems like it would be the best thing to upgrade first. Right. Because, like, having those 2 contracts, I picked 2 that were travel contracts.
But NOS doesn't want to spend the money.
Yeah, go to a certain part of Kerbal.
Right.
And I started them, and then I realized, wait, I don't have the parts to do this. Because, like, I launched, and I didn't get anywhere close to it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to cancel those contracts and go start new contracts to make the money to get this. But I like the new contracts.
You don't you cancel rather than revert. You're like the most honest Kerbal player out there.
Well, I mean, reverting them is going to give the money back either way. So,
well, I mean, like revert back to before you even took the contract.
In Kerbal Space Program, much like many relationships, it's important to admit when you've messed up.
When you made a mistake.
Just admitting that you made a mistake and saying, "I'm sorry."
And you know what? Just like in relationships, it'll cost you.
It'll cost you. You're going to lose some, but you're going to gain some in the wrong. Because Kerbal's about trust.
Yeah.
It's about, what goes up.
The more you know.
Must come down.
Yeah.
Pretty hard. Because you got to hit that red button sometime.
Exactly.
And, it's not going to be the best.
You got to know when to bail out.
You got to rip off a Band-Aid now and then, and it's just, you got to do it quick. You don't draw it out. But yeah, the update's kind of neat.
Well, thanks for listening, folks. We're done.
Yeah, it's cool. I was having some bugs, a few little bugs here. Anytime I'd go into the VAB, like all the parts, like icons for the parts would be all over the screen for a second. Then they would go into the tabs. Speaking of,
yes,
they separated the fuel canisters from all of the
engines.
Yeah, all the engines, and it's awesome.
Yeah,
thank you so much for that, because half the time some of them look like one thing and they're another thing, and at least they're a little more divided up. And you can sort them by name and price. Uh-huh. So, so it's just like my Amazon wish list. I sort low to high and then try to talk myself up.
There you go. Well, I was kind of holding off on my opinion about the new tabs simply because I'm getting used to where everything is now.
Yeah, it's like you move into a new house and you put all your stuff in different shelves.
Well, I mean, here. Something simple like, for example, the connecting rods, which for some reason I just immediately went blank on what those are. But you know what I'm talking about.
Struts?
Yeah, the strut. Thank you. The minute I need a term, it just goes, you know what? I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the struts. I got so used to them, the normal struts. I got so used to having to click one page over to get to what I wanted.
Oh yeah.
And now they're all just right there at the top. The one thing that surprised me a little bit was the sub-assembly tab. You now actually have to click through to get to. There's that in the upper left of the screen, upper top left of the screen. There's an arrow.
Yeah.
You have to click on that to move the tabs over, and then down is where the sub-assembly tab is, where it used to be just there at the bottom.
I hadn't looked for it yet.
Yeah.
I didn't use a lot of sub-assemblies, but
I'm not sure why they did that. I'm sure there's a reason.
Yeah.
But stuff like that, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I'm not used to it.
Yeah.
I'm having to kind of get used to it. But I like the new building tools that they've added.
The little rotate things and stuff. Those are really cool.
Yeah.
Now that I have them, I think I may use them.
Right.
If you were to say I had that option before, I'd be like, I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah.
But the first thing I thought of is whenever I made the Mega Rolly with had all the command pods as the wheels.
I knew Rolly had come in here somewhere.
Well, no. See, the thing is, I would be able to rotate them and make it way better. Because I could actually make better wheels out of command pods and stuff. And
there are times when I've tried in the past to put a part on, and I just cannot get it oriented the way I want it to.
Yeah, it's like if you didn't just click it over and use the way it was when you grabbed it.
Now you have the option.
Yeah, and it's like not just like 5 options.
Right.
You have a bunch of different, you could just slightly tilt it to the left or right or whatever. It's really cool.
I will say Kerbal, to me, has always looked like a professionally well-done game. But 0.90, and I don't know that I can necessarily put my finger on it, but it went, I mean, for some reason, it's just like twice as professional.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it just looks and operates so much better. And I don't know that I can point at one specific thing, but it just seems like, when you hover your mouse over a stage and the way things light up is different. And when you try and put pieces together, it's like they seem to go together better. And I mean, everything just seems to come together better.
They have a really cool way of whenever you see a new feature, it's kind of, after you've used it, it's kind of hard to imagine playing the game without it.
Right.
And that's a really good sign that they're making a lot of really good changes, because you're not like, oh man, I really miss whenever I couldn't rotate parts and put them on right. That's not very cool.
I remember the days when there wasn't a Kerbal Space Program.
Oh, I remember whenever I finished the tech tree and I had nothing to do.
Yeah. Oh, those great days before computers. Those were the best.
Yeah.
Although, honestly, I'm sure someone would agree with that statement.
Back when times were simple. And
when I was a kid, we didn't have fancy computers. No, I have to say, I really like it. I will say one disappointment, though. I was really hoping that they would get a stable 64-bit. As far as I can tell, because when I tried to load the 64-bit version, I got that same warning. Warning, this is unstable and you may have problems. And I tried to run it, and sure enough. And it was like,
it's like all the warnings you get whenever you meet me.
Warning.
Unstable, has problems.
I thought that was me. At least that's what my mom always said.
We'll make that the new disclaimer for the podcast.
Right. Now, I will say, I wanted to get your opinion on 0.90 more than mine, because you're more of a career player. I messed around with career so that I could talk about it and note the changes. But I mean, I'm still a sandbox science player. To me, Kerbal Space Program is about flying and landing and orbiting, and I mean, to me, it's all about the space flight itself. But I can see that for people who want more management, I mean, they've added more to the career mode. I mean, now you can upgrade your Kerbals. Now you can upgrade your buildings. Now, I mean, they've added a much, again, it's more strategery. It's more strategy.
Yeah.
There's more to deal with.
It scratches that itch that I normally would not have gotten in sandbox or even science mode, because the only thing that made me choose between sandbox and science is because with science I scaled up.
Right.
I started with barely anything and I unlocked things to move up. Well, career mode did that, and it gave me like money to manage and stuff, and now this one, like, I now have my own space center. Instead of me, like, using somebody else's Kerbal Space Center and to get money and funds, now it feels like it's mine, because mine will look good. Like, I could choose what areas I want to upgrade. It's like, oh, we're not going to build a cafeteria today.
Right.
We're going to build a bigger administration building, and so you're just adding on all these different things. And so now it feels like it's for somebody who is not as enthralled or impassioned with the space travel part.
Right.
And they're just looking more for just a game. I think this is more of a hook for people who are not as, much into the physics, but just looking for a game to play. Right.
Well, and also you made a good point too, which is now that you've got all of these things that you can level up and change, Kerbal Space Program has now evolved into a game where, 10 different people are going to play it, and they're going to play 10 different versions of the game.
Yeah.
It's like we talked about MMOs earlier. It's like those. I mean, nobody levels up exactly the same way. Everybody's going to assign their points differently. Everybody's going to choose different skills. And so, for everybody, especially when you have some factors in there that automatically shift, it becomes a different game for whoever plays it. It's much more customizable, that's not something I would have said would enhance the game until I saw what it actually does.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can see that they have really, you remember way back when they first introduced the career mode, we were fairly critical of it because we kind of felt like, you've added a lot of work, but there's really no reward. It doesn't really come together.
Yeah.
Once it came together with 0.25, now everything just seems to be, it's like now they've got everything in place. Now they're really polishing it. So, I mean, they've taken a great game and they've made it even better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will say, squad, I give you major props. You done good. Very good update. Thank you again. The fact that career mode is in there and science mode and sandbox mode. I'm glad that all three modes are still there.
Which one of the cool things is, you're like, oh, hey, you play Kerbal Space Program too. Why, yes, I do. What mode do you play? And, like you could have different conversations based on that. Like a sandbox, if two sandbox players could talk about what big thing they're building and, like where they're taking it. Two science players would probably brag about how much science they've gotten from a certain mission. And two career players would talk about how, like, what they currently have upgraded or what buildings they've accidentally destroyed and, like what contracts they're working on or anything like that.
Well, I know we're going to get to a later letter from Amy Kay, but I mean, she made the comment that, she is just absolutely eaten alive with this.
Yeah.
And
that sounds awful.
Eaten alive in a good way. Yeah, not in an infectious way.
Oh, well.
Not in a have to stay home and take a lot of medicine.
I'm going to agree. I just don't think being eaten alive sounds good in any way, but let's just go.
Well, maybe eaten alive by a python.
Yeah.
Remember that show that somebody it was like, we're going to eat someone alive with a python, and then finally the guy went, hey, wait a minute. I changed my mind. Yeah. I do not want to be eaten by a python.
Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed? Who'd have figured it out?
Yeah.
I like that little dramatic theater moment you had back there, where it was like, hi, I play Kerbal. I do too.
Yeah.
So that was nice. That was good.
You heard that too?
Are the voices in your head
I'm glad
talking
somebody
to
else
you?
can hear those. That sounds great.
One thing I do want to toss out to the listenership. I did not get a chance to send out a tweet or an email or anything, but that's our opinion of 0.90. We definitely like it. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
I would like to hear your opinion. We've got some emails and some tweets about it. But I do want to toss that out. Obviously, this is not the only episode where we talk about 0.90. But I would love to hear from the listenership. Please email us and tell us what you think. I think that the more weeks we get past the point of this release, and the more time people have playing with it and upgrading and really kind of getting in there and shaking out all the bells and whistles, I think the opinions will get more and more solidified. And I would like to hear from our listeners. What do you think about 0.90? So, okay. You want to go ahead and move on to our next segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Mission briefing. We're going to go ahead and start. We do Kerbal news and we do letters. I want to go ahead and start with news simply because this relates to what we're talking about, which is the update 0.90. I'm going to start with an article that came out. This is PC Gamer Magazine, and online, of course, PCGamer.com. And the title is Kerbal Space Program Beta Update Released. Quote, there's been a lot of early access controversy and disappointment this year. Whatever your overall attitude towards the practice, I'd argue that Kerbal Space Program is one example of it being done well, with no need for reservations or caveats. It's already a good game, and frequently it becomes an even better one. Now it's a beta one, too. A few hours ago, well, obviously this came out on December the 21st, obviously. Okay. A few hours ago, KSP launched into update 0.90, the official designation for the game's beta release. There are over 170 changes found in the full patch notes, but in a new blog post, the team explained the basics of what it's about. And now I'm quoting the blog post. Quote, building upon a long-term project that was introduced with the last update's destructible facilities, Squad writes, Players will now have the ability to start from the ground up with a basic space center and turn it into a sprawling compound in the new upgradable facilities feature. It's not just buildings either. Players will unlock new capabilities and bonuses as their career path progresses. End quote. End quote. Kerbals also now have a progression path. As they complete missions, they'll gain experience to unlock new skills. Advanced piloting, science gathering, and spacecraft repairs are some of the intrepid astronauts' potential upgrades. Again, PCGamer.com, that is their first article, I guess, about the latest update. And you have something related to that.
Yeah, I have something it's a post on Reddit.
Okay.
From Thatcher C. I love 0.90. Is that what they're calling it? What are they calling it?
Well,
0.90.
0.90.
I love .90. I've been playing for a year or two now. Can't remember. It feels like forever. And I've done most of the stuff you can do. Interplanetary missions, SSTOs, space stations, FAR, remote tech, all that. When I started the new career mode game yesterday, I felt that newbie feeling again. No SAS, super limited ships, no maneuver nodes, all new contracts. I was totally clueless. It felt great. I had to relearn how to make a Mun rocket using the starting parts, and it took like 5 tries to make orbit. And then I ran out of funds. Awesome experience. Not many times whenever I say I've ran out of money would be an awesome experience, like afterward. Actually, no, it's sometimes. Squad, thanks so much for keeping the same feel of KSP while completely changing the beginning dynamics. The new career mode is streets ahead of the earlier science and career modes. I've been having the best time playing KSP that I've had in ages.
My brain, the way it operates, the whole time you're reading that letter, do you know what's going through my mind?
What?
Like a virgin.
Oh.
Charged for the very first time. Because, I mean, that's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
We also got a tweet from one of our listeners. We're talking about how you can upgrade the various Kerbals. I wasn't really sure what that meant. And then who was it that sent it to us?
Jarmenia.
It's the Kerbal cheat sheet, and it tells you what each level does.
Yeah, it's what's funny is about things like this. I almost don't want to know this and see it as a level up, but with it being KSP, I may never find out unless I right-click the right thing.
Right.
So it's kind of like good to know. So there's like pilot trait effects, and there's like allow SAS on like you get that level 1.
That's level 1? Okay.
Yeah. Or sorry, level 0.
Okay.
Around level 1 is when you get orientate craft to prograde and retrograde.
Okay. So you start at level 0.
Yeah.
With SAS. And then, okay.
When you reach level 2, you get orientate craft to normal, anti-normal, radial in, and radial out. And then when you reach level 3, you can do it to target, anti-target, and craft to maneuver.
And also, that's for your pilot. I know that there's engineering effects, and there's also, aren't there science effects?
Yep. Level 1, you get to, for engineer, you get to repair parachutes. 2 is repair landing legs, and 3 is repair wheels.
Interesting.
Whenever you move on to science, it's done by percentages. So at level 0, it doesn't do anything.
Right. And
then each it goes 5% up. So bonus to science return from part and science return from vessel is level 0 is nothing, and then level 1 it's 5, then 10, then 15, then 20%. Now, something I noticed is go up to level 5. Around level 3 is whenever everything kind of tops out. And so, like, the difference
according to the cheat sheet.
According to the cheat sheet.
We may be wrong.
Yeah.
But it looks like level 3, 4, and 5 are all the same.
Yeah, so the difference in level 3 and 5 is pretty much nothing. Now,
that may be 0.91.
Yeah, so far there's no difference, but there could be in the future. So like we made it go up to level 5, but we didn't make 5 levels worth of things. We just made 3 so far. So there could be new abilities that open up, or the percentages could be different.
Right.
So.
Oh, and in case anybody is concerned, I want to clear the air right now. I want to assure you, at no point in today's progress report or in today's podcast will we make a joke about 90210.
No, we will not.
We will not, including that one.
Yeah,
we will not play on the 90210.
No,
we refuse to do that.
No,
we won't even mention it.
Yeah, we wouldn't even make a single joke about 90210.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
nice iPod shirt.
Yeah,
iZod shirt. I said iPod. Oh my god, that was so bad.
So you got a letter?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and start out. We got an audio letter, and this came from Orbiter, and let's go ahead and go right into that.
Hello, Biff and Nos, and all you Kerbalcast listeners out there. My name is Mark, or I go by Orbiter. First off, congratulations, Nos, on successfully launching into your new job. And congratulations, Biff, on completing your tech tree. I hope you successfully land on all the planets on Jewel. Sorry, I mean moons. Anyway, my mission briefing. I successfully landed on the man, only to find I ran out of fuel, so Jeb was stranded. I would blame myself, but I will blame the wicked cold I had at the time. It seems the Kraken strikes in real life as well as in Kerbal Space Program, doesn't it? Anyway, we sent a rescue ship to rescue Jeb, but only to forget to collect the science from the command module. So now it's sitting there as a testament to my incompetence. Needless to say, I can rendezvous with an orbiting spacecraft, land near another spacecraft and rescue Kerbal in distress. I can even dock safely with at least 3 attempts. But I keep forgetting to collect science around the place. Sounds terrible for my space program. Well, anyway, to make up for my mistakes, I'm currently science hopping on Minmus. I'm collecting science by the scoopful, just like it's mint ice cream. I also would like to answer a question posed by one of your listeners about using different controllers for Kerbal Space Program. I've tried using a Leap Motion controller to fly space planes. And if you don't know what a Leap Motion controller is, it's a device that can detect your hands' movements when you hover over it, and allows you to control with hand movements and gestures, just like the Xbox Kinect, but only just using your hands. Anyway, I mapped the WASD keys and throttle controls to it, and I started getting used to it, until my arms dropped off. Anyway, after reattaching my arms, I reverted back to Neanderthal controls of banging away at the WASD keys. I find it more natural that way. Finally, I look forward to hearing what you have to say about Beta 0.90 KSP, the new update. And I also look forward to what's going to happen in a Kerbal's life. Is Jeb going to be rescued? Anyway, thank you guys for the great podcast. You raise my periapsis when I'm feeling low. I do really enjoy the show. And may your Kerbals find the snacks they are looking for.
Homer T-Mobile.
Oh, that is great. I love that.
Yeah.
That is so good.
That's a great letter.
Yeah. I love audio letters.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. First of all, it allows me to be just completely lazy, and just go here,
Well, and
here's a letter.
It's kind of cool to hear the voices
Yeah.
of, some of the people come in instead of us like constantly using that letter generator we
Right.
use.
Especially when it's a letter that good.
Yeah. So we no longer have to hit the generate letters button and just, get random letters put together.
Wouldn't that be a cool app if you had like a random...
You're like, I need fan mail. And you
Yeah.
just smash the space bar and it writes a letter for you.
Random podcast letter generator.
Dear Biff and Nos, thank you for viewing your Kerbalcast. It has been very fun.
There was one segment that I did not put in the best of, and
Yeah.
I didn't think about it until like literally today.
Oh, wait, Mech Biff and Mech Nos?
Mech Biff.
Yeah.
I wish I'd remembered that and put that.
Ha, very funny.
Haha, that's funny. Right. Yes, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I was going back and I kept hearing myself saying right over and over, and I was, oh my God. Well, everybody's got little speech, kind of little crutches, verbal crutches that they go to. And I guess mine is, like I say right a lot and, yes. And I can't remember. I've got a couple, but, and I don't ever hear them until I'm listening back.
Yeah, you don't realize you're doing it. It's kind of like when people say like a lot.
Right.
It's like.
Yeah. Who knew like could be punctuation?
Yeah.
Now, that was a great letter. That came from Orbiter.
That's a great letter.
Yeah, that really was a good letter. And it also, believe it or not, it ties right into the next thing we've got.
Yeah, the controllers.
Which I didn't even think about when we popped off that letter, but Mittenpo tweeted us about this. There is on the App Store on iTunes, and this is, I don't know if it's for any other platform. As far as I can tell, it's iOS only.
Yeah, so it's not Android yet.
But it's called Custom Control Pad, and the publisher on this is Frozen Pepper, and it is $4.99. It is. I mean, it's a touch controller for Kerbal Space Program. Mm-hmm. It actually works for several things, But Kerbal Space Program is one of them. And it's got, like, for example, it's got, pitch and yaw as a thumb button. You've got your roll in here, your throttle. There's a button for staging. There's an abort button. There's all kinds of things. Now, there is a mod that you're supposed to be able to either find or get that will give you the data information from your ships. Mitten Poe was saying that he's having trouble finding that. But to get this to work, there's a little server app that you have to download from Frozen Pepper's website that will allow you to wirelessly control Kerbal Space Program with the custom control pad. Again, it's $4.99. I have not messed with this yet. We had talked about this before. I'm so used to the keyboard layout that I don't know that I would enjoy or be able to use something like this very well.
Orbiter had the thing, you don't even use buttons. You just wave your hands around.
Just wave your hands.
Like a madman.
You do the chicken dance.
And then his arms fell off.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. And then
quick thing, the Orbiter. It's okay to forget your science there now and then.
Right.
Because like Albert Einstein, he wore the same clothes every day. Like he had the same couple of suits.
But I thought he did that so that he wouldn't have to think about it.
Yeah, well,
I thought that was on purpose. I didn't think that was a forgetful thing.
Yeah, well, it's easy to always remember what to wear when it's always right there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you don't want to. You saw The Fly, didn't you? I remember. You're quoting Jeff Goldblum on me. The one thing that I did not mention earlier, which had been brought up just now. When you do the SAS, the first time I did it with update 0.90, when that whole column of symbols came up to the left of the nav ball, I was like, what the heck is all that?
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, orient to prograde, orient to retrograde.
Yeah. Welcome to me whenever I first started playing this game. I was like, well, what does all this mean?
What does this mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, again, Orbiter, thank you so much. And we were talking about, it's called Custom Control Pad, and you can find it on the App Store, on iTunes. If anybody gets this and uses it, and I had asked Mitten Poe about this as well, I want to hear, please let me know.
I want to hear a review of it.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think of it? Is it worth it? Because we have been talking about different types of controllers. Let us know what you think. Custom Control Pad, App Store, iTunes. Let's go ahead and move on to our next letter, and you've got it. Who's it from?
This one comes from the awesome power of rockets. Hail, Kermanauts.
Hail, Kerbonauts.
You raised the question of using a flight stick in KSP in episode 31. I picked up a Logitech Extreme 3D specifically to play KSP. It was nice and cheap, around 36 Australian dollars and dingo bucks. And I see it on U.S. websites from time to time between 15 and 25 U.S. dollars. Like both of you, I am accustomed to the WASD keys, but decided on a whim to go for a flight stick. This one works with KSP out of the box without any special tricks. That's good. Most time whenever it comes to buying that stuff, I'm like, I don't want to have to look for drivers and whatever to make it work.
Boy, and I said I was lazy.
It does require setup for each of the modes available in game flight, like flight, staging, orbit, rendezvous, rover, and even Kerman EVA. I don't recommend the last one, as in my experience it tends to break keyboard control of the poor Kermanaut, who is left to float free until someone can fetch them home. Where the controller excels is in space planes. Oh, I bet. I still bite the dirt regularly, but that is more to do with design than skill, mostly. I have a hard time in orbital flight, but I find it useful for landing craft on airless bodies. Since I'm not really the world's most coordinated chap, I still find it easier to land with the keyboard and just fine-tune the throttle with the flight stick.
I wonder, do you still use the mouse, or does the flight stick supersede? I mean, does it completely knock you out of the keyboard and mouse configuration?
I'm not sure.
Or is it I wonder if it's a combination.
Maybe, it could be in addition to.
Probably.
After seeing a bunch of custom controllers in the official KSP forum, I've decided to try it for myself. I am no stranger to electronics, but I've not dealt with LCD panels or microcontrollers before. I picked up a cheap,
What?
I picked up a cheap Arduino Uno R3.
Yeah, it's in all caps, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And managed to get an old LCD saying "Hello World" in about 10 minutes. It tunes out a lot of parts that have generic in-out configurations, so no need so one need not fear breaking something. There are lots of open source codes for Arduino, and the tutorials are pretty clear for the most part. But I digress. The flight stick has its uses, but not indispensable.
Okay, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I got some Wikipedia going on here. Uh-huh. It says, Arduino is a family of single-board microcontrollers.
Oh, okay.
So
it's like a sitcom in the making.
The more you know.
P.S. The one mod I can't live without is KData. It gives a simple readout for apoapsis, periapsis, time to apoapsis, and most importantly, radar altitude. The one feature is essential for landing from the outside view. And that is the main feature I wish to implement with Arduino.
I think that's the second time I've heard someone mention KData. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah? I'm not sure. It sounded new to me, but I don't know.
Well, this is what they always say about reruns on TV. If you haven't seen it, it's new to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Next letter. Oh, this is same topic. This comes to us. Wait a minute. This is the awesome power of rockets again.
What?
We have two.
Oh.
That's right. This is a follow-up. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Boy, we're really coordinated here.
Yeah, there we go.
You can honestly, you can tell that this is like an amateur.
Yeah. We're real organized.
We're organized. And you know what? Bonus points to anyone who catches the taxi driver reference in that.
Well, now they have it either way.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so again, awesome power of rockets, and this was a follow-up. He says, Flight Stick and KSP addendum. I neglected to mention the great plug-in G-HUD for the Logitech G series keyboards. Depending on your model, it will display the usual apo-peri for your vessel, apoapsis, periapsis, and but also has a rendezvous assist with parameters for your target. It also displays the planet and your flight orbit arc. I have an old G15, so my graphics are limited, but the newer models have nice color screens. This plug-in is 32-bit only. I do wish that it had an option for radar altitude only, but that's okay, as Arduino is fun. And then there's a smiley emoticon. So, okay, you know what's funny? We both read a letter from the awesome power of rockets. Did you hear? I almost said the awesome power of robots.
I don't know.
We are the robots. Ding, ding, ding. Okay,
this one comes from
Craftwork.
Cool with Pie.
Cool with Pie.
Sup, Niffin Boss. I am writing to you on this Merry Monday. But
Merry Monday.
Holiday's coming up. To tell you of my recent adventures in KSP to commemorate the release of the .90 beta. So, 0.90 dropped, and I decided to celebrate with a trip to the Mun. This was my third attempt, having one successful one, and one in which I didn't circularize quick enough and hit the exit. So I'm on my merry way, getting a Mun encounter and all, so I had passed the encounter and set my circulation node, and when I get impatient, decide, a little time warping can't hurt, right? Wrong. I know this problem. I missed my node by about 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm heading towards a Kerbal escape, so I burn to fix that when all of a sudden I get a Minmus encounter. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm fairly new to this game, although I have 175 hours. Most of that was spent messing about in the atmosphere, only recently transitioning to orbital craft and Mun landings. This Minmus encounter was a blessing and a chance to brag to my KSP playing peers, all the while saying, I meant to do that. I decided to go for it. I finished the burn and I'm on a direct collision course with Minmus. I slow my speed, lower my gear, brace for impact, and success! Touchdown! Jeb got out, planted the flag, and did a little walk before returning to the craft. At this point, I had a decision to make. Should I try to make a burn home? I decided to quick save and go for it. I'd transfer to Kerbal orbit without incident, and burn into a nice circular orbit, when I realized that I don't have any parachutes. That is a Kerbal life indeed.
Yes,
so now I'm in a waiting game for Kerbal attachment system to upgrade to 0.90, so I can send up a craft to refuel, attach parachutes, and go home. I can just hear Jeb twiddling his thumbs.
Yep.
Thanks for reading. Keep calm and Kerbal on. Cool with Pie.
You know what? I bet Jeb has a smartphone.
Yeah.
Unlike someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, my current job, I'm out 4 days in a row staying at a hotel every night, like working construction sites, and I don't have a smartphone or way to use internet. So
is Prometheus on every night?
Man, that was a good first week whenever it was on. I got Total Recall this week.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
The new one or the old one?
The new one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I at least had something. Well, I think each week I'm going to get some sci-fi movie and be like, yes, a reason to hold on.
Kate Beckinsale. Okay, let's move on. Next letter. And this comes to us from a frequent contributor. This is Thomas Eccles, or as he calls himself, Tommy Freckles. And he says, wanted something to report. Homer to your mobile. Thomas Eccles here again. I gave you a bit of rest from me. Really, in other words, I don't have anything to report until now. Play dum-dum-dum sound effect. I was doing some refueling on my space station. I've been working on it for a while, since the last time I spoke to you, and it's quite big. Holds 34 Kerbals. I was still using TAC life support when suddenly I got about 100 messages on my screen saying Station 1 is running out of water, food, waste storage, O2, and so on. So I rushed to the VA building, or VAB, leaving the VA building. Gotta love that. Leaving the ship halfway through a burn, the ship had to plummet onto the space center. But no matter how much it would cost to fix the damage it had done, I had to get food to these guys. So after about 20 minutes of planning, I got docked. But I realize I'm docked on the wrong station. I'm docked on Station 2. Facepalm. Then on cue, a list of 26 Kerbals came up on my screen saying they had all died. Well, that's very polite.
Yeah.
It's like...
I mean, it's good to be notified of things like
just
that.
FYI, we're all dead here.
Yeah.
So then I planned to move Station 2's food, well, they don't need it, over to Station 1. I then smashed into it at a... I've done this. Yeah, those rendezvous where you're going, yeah, that's coming up real nice. Whoa! Okay. I smashed into it at about 200 meters a second. So then I deleted 0.25 and downloaded 0.90 and played another 5 hours. Happy Kerbaling. Sit tight and fly the ride. P.S. This was all in one campaign. Again, Tommy Freckles, or Thomas Eccles. He has sent in audio letters before.
Yeah.
And I would encourage him to do so again, because I love it when people read their own letters.
Uh-huh.
But again, Thomas Eccles, thank you so much for the letter. And on to the next one.
Dear Biff and Nos, first of all, no problems at all with glitches in sound quality. I listen on my phone, and your dulcet tones always come through loud and clear. Well, it looks like I finally have something to report again. Last episode, John Pluto moved on, asked about alternate control methods. I actually have two, and I really prefer one of them to my WASD mouse combination. The other one, well, let's just say that I'm glad it didn't cost me more than €5. That's about $6.24 for all you non-Europeans out there. My first alternative was a joypad. No specific brand that I remember, but it's a very cheap one. Bought it for €5 in a toy store. I connected it and set it up just fine in the settings screen and then attempted to fly a space plane with it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the settings so that the plane was not constantly trying to flip over in all three directions at once. Took a few hours, but I finally decided that this joypad was not compatible with KSP. Recently, I found a mod that will actually allow me to set up an alternate control method, which slightly better, so I'm hoping that I'll still get this joypad to work because of the problems with my joystick. Then I decided to go for a slightly more expensive joystick. It set me back about €15, and it had a whole load of buttons and a throttle that all configured easily in the settings screen. Since I'm into space planes, I don't like using WASD because it doesn't allow for the nuanced control that I always want, especially while landing. My joystick allows me to fly space planes with a subtlety that I really want to have, and it helps. The only problem is that I play KSP on the laptop, usually while sitting on the couch, and the joystick needs to be stuck to a surface or the base will move with the stick. That's the reason I went for a joypad in the first place.
When you said I play the game sitting on, my brain immediately went to not the couch. I thought, oh man.
Yeah. My KSP bathroom module.
Yeah.
So in conclusion,
now that would be the epitome of lazy.
So in conclusion, neither of my two alternate control methods are really satisfactory, but I do feel that more subtle control, especially in space planes, is often needed. When I don't have my joystick connected, I usually use Smart ASS surface setting in MechDev to keep my space planes pointed in a specific direction and altitude for landing. With the joystick, I can easily do landings. Oh, and if you need anyone with a genuine accent to do Werner von Kerman's voice in a Kerman Life, let me know.
Hey, I'm thinking a Kerbal Life is a hit.
Yeah. Homer to your mobile, Rins.
All right, cool. Well, I have never messed with a flight stick, but the Steam sale, the 2014 Steam holiday sale.
Yeah.
They have a Microsoft Flight Simulator X 10. They now have a Steam version of it that they've come out with, and I piddled around with it a little bit, enough to figure out that trying to fly those things using the WASD configuration was an exercise in frustration. So I could see myself investing in a flight stick now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I loaded the game, and within probably 2 minutes I had crashed. So I thought, well, I think I'm starting right about where everybody else does. So we're on to our next letter. This one comes from Crater, and it says, "Hi guys, glad to hear that NOS's EVA ended smoothly and not with him needing rescuing from orbit. You asked in episode 31 for people's experiences playing with other controllers. Well, I have a joystick attached to my gaming machine, and I've tried it for various things in the past. The problem is that space planes and rockets need different controls. Pitch is fine. Pushing the joystick back and forth does what you would expect with both. Yaw and roll, however, kind of swap over. For a rocket, moving the stick sideways should make the rocket tip sideways, yaw, and twisting the stick should make it spin along its axis, roll. For a plane, sideways on the stick should make it roll along its axis, and twisting the stick should make it yaw using its rudder. Unfortunately, you can't swap the axes on the stick without going all the way out of the game and to the settings menu. That's what I would call a buzzkill.
Yeah.
You
just called me lazy for that.
What?
for not wanting to go and adjust things.
No, I'm called no, because what that does is it breaks the experience.
Yeah.
No, because you were like, I don't even want to plug the thing in. I just want to set it on the table and it works.
Is that so wrong?
You're absolutely right. and do you sit on the potty and play?
It's easier.
It's easier. Yeah, that's true. Mom, more Hot Pockets. That said, I do have the top hat. I'm sorry. You got me off on that now. That said, I do have the Top Hat viewpoint controller set up for EVA Kerbals and for RCS when docking. And it's nice. Lots of eyes and nice. And the throttle slider is so much better than the keyboard controls. Mostly, though, for launches and general maneuvers, I end up back on keyboard and mouse. Different topic. Count me as one vote for never having noticed any issues with the audio quality. 64K seems totally fine to me. Again, I'm going to toss that out. I'm still getting opinions about this. We have a listener that's getting audio glitches.
It's like a compression
quality. Yeah,
right?
and they said that they're having problems with it. We compress everything at 64K MP3 to keep the file size down. If that's an issue, I would like to know. So far, I haven't heard anyone that's had an issue other than the one listener.
The original issue.
But if I need to, I can always kick the compression higher. Continuing, this is still Crater. Finally, I would like to share a cautionary tale of the damage that some mods can cause. I recently tried out a mod that alerts you when there's science that you can do, such as when you move into a new biome in orbit and you need to fire off your instruments. Well, the other day I was sending Jeb and Bill over to Minmus as a relief crew for my station orbiting there. And while I was running my transfer burn, I got an alert to say that some science or other hadn't been done in the biome that they had just crossed into. The mod very helpfully has a button that you can press that automatically runs the experiment for you to save you hunting for the instrument on your ship. So I hit it. Apparently, the missing science was an EVA report, from space high over Kerbin. I was now staring at Jeb, who was in turn staring at the rapidly disappearing bulk of his ride, still accelerating away from him at just over 1.5 Gs. Oops. He got on the radio immediately to Bill, who was still in the cockpit. I suspect Bill was laughing. And once Bill and Mission Control had finished laughing, I knew it, I was able to take control of the ship again, kill the engines, and look back to find Jeb, who was now 2.3 kilometers away and moving further all the time. Thankfully, I was able to kill my relative velocity, head back to him slowly and carefully, and pick him up. Unfortunately, when you slam on the brakes, turn around, and go back on yourself, it makes a bit of a mess of your transfer window. The mission ended up having to scrub due to lack of fuel to get out there, and Gurmund and Curzon Kerman are still orbiting Minmus, while spending their unexpected duty time planning on what to do to Jeb when they finally get back home. The moral of this story is, don't get out of your ship while the engine is in full thrust.
You're not going to ghost ride the whip?
Yeah, there you go. I could see that happening. You push a button and all of a sudden Jeb is like floating next to the ship.
I've done it.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for keeping on producing such an entertaining podcast, and thanks to all your regular contributors, old and new, for all their hard work. I wonder if Homer's mobile is Android or iPhone. Homer to your mobile, Crater. That's a good letter.
Yeah.
I like that. Do we have more? What's the next letter?
Yep. This one comes from Guy Geisen. Dear Nazi
Guy
Def.
Geisen.
Wait, no. Dear Kerbalcast listeners.
Oh.
Okay. Please don't kill me. I do not consider myself a gamer. I consider myself a nerd who likes engineering, physics, computer science, and math. Because of that, I primarily play KSP with about 3 other games. I use a laptop to play games and browse the internet. I also mess with graphic design, programming, and 3D modeling. Because it is a laptop, that means with minimum graphics settings and a 70-ish part chip, I get about 10 frames per second.
Oh, wow.
So I have 2 requests for the listeners. First, I want you guys to recommend some simulators, sci-fi, and KSP-like games. And second, is it worth it for me to get a gaming PC? Thanks in advance, Guy Geisen.
Guy Geisen.
If you can stand playing a game at 10 frames per second, I don't know. But a gaming PC, if you're talking PC versus laptop, I don't know, it's kind of like what it's worth. Like right now, I'm saving up for a gaming laptop so I can take it with me on my work trips. But a gaming PC is usually what I go for first because they're easier to upgrade, they're easier to change up. And if you use a computer a lot at home, then there's not much point in the laptop.
Well, and also, and I understand that you can build your own laptop, but the parts tend to be or can be non-standard, so it's a little more difficult.
Very limited.
The answer I would give is that it depends on how much time you spend on your PC or laptop. I spend vast amounts of time playing Kerbal and playing other games and being on the internet and doing all kinds of different things. So to me, one of the best investments I ever made is sitting right here, my gaming laptop.
Yeah.
And it's nice that I can, because before, when I would build a gaming PC, a desktop, there was always that dividing line between games I could play while I was at home, and if I was ever on a trip, whether it was visiting family or work related or whatever, there were games that I could only play while I was traveling.
Yeah.
And generally, the mobile games were not nearly as good as the desktop PC games. The nice thing about a gaming laptop is that you can take, it goes, the same games that you play at home are the same games that you can play on the road.
Yeah, I mean, they said they only have about 3 games they play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you may get a gaming laptop just to the point that it can play those 3 games efficiently if they're games that you're going to play, like, endlessly.
Right.
Like, Biff doesn't really have to get something that's going to run, like, all the newest, like, highly technical shooters, because the main thing he uses it for is Kerbal.
Right.
So, I don't know, you kind of got to look at your budget versus your interests and, like, what you want out of it, but I don't know. I'm really happy with my desktop, but because of my new situation, gaming laptop may be on the horizon.
Yeah. That would be my answer to the question would be, you need to ask yourself, how much is this investment worth to you? If you are spending a lot of time then doing this, then yeah, that's a good investment. If it's something, it's like, when grandma says, do I need a computer? How much of a computer do I need? Well, it's like, well, what do you do? Well, I look at Facebook, my grandkids' Facebook, and they hate it. And I do email.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you don't need much.
Yeah.
But then you get somebody else who, I want to play the latest and greatest every game that comes out, and I want to do it at max settings.
You're going to have to shell out for that.
Yeah, obviously. And you're going to keep shelling out, because max settings, you want to talk about a moving target.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? It's like the minute you can go out and buy the absolute top of the line gaming system, graphics card, everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take long before things start coming out that are above and beyond its abilities. Interestingly enough, and this might be of help to you, North Star, who is a frequent contributor, I had mentioned that I tend to avoid running a lot of mods because of performance issues. North Star writes in, and this is something that Guy Geisen, this might actually help you. He wrote in and he says, Biff, a super quick note. You said you're having performance issues with too many mods installed. Have you tried installing Active Texture Management? And that's the name of the mod, by the way, Active Texture Management. It is a mod built purely to reduce memory usage and improve performance of KSP. I suggest looking it up in the forums. I tried to find it in Curse. It is not there.
Okay.
The easiest way to get to it, and this is how I did it, go to Google, Active Texture Management, KSP, and it'll take you right to it. What it does is it takes all of the graphics in the game, all of the textures, and it rescales them down to much smaller sizes. You really do not notice visually. You don't really seem to notice much of a difference. The biggest difference that I noticed is rockets, the fuel tanks on the rockets, with the textures as is. In other words, vanilla right out of the box KSP. They tend to be very smooth. With Active Texture Management, it seems like there's more detail. You'll notice more like ribbing, and you'll notice more, twinning and that sort of thing on the surface. In other words, the surface has more detail. And I don't know if it's because it's a lower resolution and it just kind of appears that way. Mm-hmm. But what it does is it scales everything down to much smaller. So it frees up. On the page that I found, Active Texture Management, somebody said that they had recovered something like 1 gig of RAM.
Wow.
By running this. The first time you load this, it is going to take, I think it took me 15 minutes just to load the game.
Yeah.
Because what it does is every time it pulls up a texture, it rescales it and then resaves it.
Oh, okay.
The second time that you run the game, however, boom, it loads.
Wow.
And it's because it's loading. It has a lot less to load into memory. So, again, it's called Active Texture Management. If you're running a system that is struggling with KSP, give it a try. I maxed out the RAM on my system, so that hasn't really been an issue. But I like being able to have that extra headroom, especially if you get two fairly good-sized crafts close to each other in orbit. The game starts to chug. If you've got two ships and they're both, let's say 500 parts each, the game is trying to juggle essentially 1,000 parts. Mm-hmm. And it's trying to juggle the fact that they're in orbit and how they're moving and what they're moving against. Yeah. And so, it's nice to have that extra headroom. So North Star has a good suggestion there. Active Texture Management is the mod. And he closes by saying, I suggest you install DRE, Deadly Reentry, and FAR, like you're considering. They add some challenges, but that just makes KSP more fun. Who doesn't love explosions? The person in the craft as it slams into the ground. That would be the answer to that question.
Short list, though.
Yeah, it was a short list. But anyway, that is from North Star. And thank you for that letter. And yes, that did make a difference. We mentioned Amy K earlier in the program. She has the last letter.
Hi, guys. I know that you are going to discuss 0.90 next week, but I thought I'd offer my thoughts so far. I have to say this is the best all-around update since I started playing KSP, and it really is starting to feel much more polished and closer to a completed game. The upgradable buildings and Kerbal experience add interesting new avenues to career mode, and the incorporation and extension of fine print into the game has made contracts as interesting as they were originally intended to be. I'm still finding new features, but hats off to Squad for a fantastic update and a great start to the KSP beta. Homer to your mobile, Amy K.
All right, and that leads us right into Amy K, also known as Amy Kettlewell, has started a new feature on the program. It's called a Kerbal Life. And at the end of the last episode, Jeb was the first Kerbal in space. And after he got up into space, that's when Mission Control discovered he didn't have a parachute. And that was last week's cliffhanger. So let's see what happens this week.
And once again, our top story. Jebediah Kerman, the first Kerbal in space, is in grave danger. After clearing the atmosphere, it was discovered that the spacecraft Orbital 1 doesn't have a parachute. Mission Control is working to bring Jeb home safely. Okay, everyone, listen up. That spacecraft is coming back in a hurry, and we need to figure out a way to get that science home.
And Jebediah.
And Jebediah, too. Now, how do we get a ship back to Kerbin without a parachute? We need a solution. Fast.
We know that if the ship hits the ground without a parachute, it will explode. We saw this a lot in the test flights. Actually, the explosions were quite pretty. You should really see them sometime.
Off topic, Carmen.
Sorry, MC. Oh, he has a personal RCS, doesn't he?
What are you thinking, Carmen?
Well, couldn't he just jump out at a low altitude and burn that?
Carmen, that is the best idea we've got. Let's go with it. Mission Control to Orbital 1. What's your status, Jeb?
MC, I've just collected the goose sample and done my final EVA report. That's about all the science I can get for this mission.
Copy that, Jeb. And I got some great news for you. We got a plan for how to get you home.
Say again, MC?
Jeb, there was a small issue that was overlooked, which means that your ship is lacking slightly in the parachute area.
Lacking in what way?
It, hadn't got one. Now, don't you go worrying about that, though. We have a plan, and it almost certainly might possibly work.
What?
Now, hear this, everyone. This is the first manned trip to space the KSP has ever done. And on this day, on my watch, we will get that science home.
Jebediah.
On my watch, we will get Jebediah home.
MC, Orbital 1 is re-entering the atmosphere. I hope you are sure about this.
Relax, Kerman. And remember my catchphrase, failure is only one option.
That's not very reassuring.
Yeah, I'll work on it. Mission Control to Orbital 1. Jeb, quickly put the goo in your sock, the reports in your pocket, and get ready to exit the command pod.
Did you say exit, MC?
Don't you worry, Jeb. Like I said, we have a plan. At my mark, you need to jump out and fire the RCS in your suit straight up.
Okay, if you say so, MC. But I'm still not sure about this.
Don't you worry, Jeb.
Approaching 5K altitude in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Now, Jeb.
I told you the explosion was pretty, but that means...
Oh no, we lost the science!
And Jebediah.
And Jebediah!
A Kerbal Life was written by Amy Kettlewell with music by Lee Rosevere. Jebediah Kerman and Kerbal Space Program were created by Squad. The game is available for purchase on Steam or KerbalSpaceProgram.com.
Hey!
No!
They killed Jeb!
He just started!
Oh, you know what?
This
is like turning dark, and we're only on episode 2.
Yeah.
One thing we should point out to the listenership: we don't know what's happening on a Kerbal Life.
Yeah.
Amy sends these to us, and when there's a cliffhanger, we have no idea what's going on any more than you do.
Yeah, we're waiting to hear what happens next.
Yeah, so it's like when she sent this one in, and I was sitting there listening, and Jeb dies at the end. I was going,
Oh.
Really?
Oh.
Anyway, I'm hoping, wow.
Yeah.
What's funny is we're trusting her to, it's like.
You know, tell him where it's going to end up.
Yeah. It's like next week there's going to be like graphic descriptions of his corpse.
Like
his charred corpse.
Man, like a Kerbal funeral. Oh,
yeah.
It's going to get like in the rain with the black umbrellas.
Hey, 4 Kerbals in a funeral. Good. Boy, there's a inside reference, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for episode 32. The Big 90, obviously named because of Beta Than Ever, the update 0.90. A program note. Obviously, holidays, Christmas and New Year's, next 2 weeks. This is going to be the last podcast for 2014. We're basically going to take next week off, and then we'll be back the first full week of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So happy holidays.
Yeah.
And I hope I hope everybody gets a chance to spend time with family and have a good Christmas and a good New Year, and
get a lot of Kerbal time in.
Get a lot of Kerbal. Yeah, you know what? If you really want to tick off your relatives, right about the time they start singing Christmas carols or whatever, go. You know what? I gotta go Kerbal.
No. You sit everyone around. You know, it's like, all right, guys, before we open our presents or before we have our meal, we're going to listen to an episode of Kerbalcast. And you're all going to listen to it by the fire.
You know what? That's
roasting
perfect.
chestnuts. I don't even know if anyone actually does that, but you'll do it. It's cool.
Okay, everybody, this is a holiday tip. You know how they always say that relatives and dead fish have something in common, which is they all start to stink after about 2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
When your relatives start to stink and you want to get them out of your house, play this podcast. Just, make it just, and don't even say anything. Just put it on, just like go get the boom box or whatever you're using to listen to this on.
Yeah.
And just start playing it. And you know what? You've got 32 episodes now. Just start at the beginning and just run them all.
And they'll be gone before episode 2 even starts.
Oh, I would think they'd be gone halfway through
Unless
episode 1.
they're Canadian, then they're staying until after episode 6.
They go, we love episode 6, yeah. Now, you know what? I just dropped into Fargo. Oh, that's so bad.
Oh, no.
Oh, how's the fricassee, yeah? Okay, so anyway, we do have some thanks that we want to toss out as always. And we start with our listeners. Again, we would not be here without you. Or if we were, nobody would be hearing us.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Our audience grows week by week. And we are heard globally, which I'm still trying to get my head around. But thank you so much.
And we want to thank our regular contributors, including
apparently we don't.
Our regular contributors, including Amy Kettlewell for A Kerbal Life.
You better not. You better bring Jeb. She killed Jeb.
She killed him.
She killed him.
We also want to thank Ascalon for posting episodes of Kerbalcast to YouTube so you can read them with our captioning.
Yes, and learn things like Homer to your mobile. Not only did she kill Jeb, she blew him up.
Yeah.
Amy. Gilly. Okay. Also, thanks to moderators. The moderators for Kerbal Space Program and Kerbal Academy subreddits. They have a link to us on their front page. They plug us, so we like to plug them right back.
Yeah. And all the music you've heard is by Professor Soap. You can find him at facebook.com/Professor Soap. Also, he has a new song that's going to be coming out soon. I haven't heard it yet, but I don't think it's out yet, but he said it's coming. So.
You know what? I do know. He did mention what the title is.
What's that?
Stop using my music, Kerbal Podcast.
Yeah. He said we could.
Yeah.
He said we could.
He said we could. We're doing it by permission.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We actually have 2 contributors now, music-wise. We've got Professor Soap does the music for the podcast, and then A Kerbal Life, it's Lee Rosevear.
Oh yeah.
So we got 2 different people.
Eventually we'll have a Kerbal Christmas album.
There we go. We wish you a Kerbal Christmas. We wish you a Kerbal Christmas. We wish you a Kerbal Christmas and a happy quick save. That was not planned at all.
Yeah, not rehearsed at all.
Not at all.
Just keep going.
And also a big thanks to the folks who make all this possible, and that is, of course, Squad. My understanding is they are closed for the holidays.
Yes.
I know Max Maps has gone to Canada. And he's already playing some classic arcade games.
Oh, there you go.
So he's rocking the arcade.
Nice.
But anyway, thanks to Squad again, guys. Good job, guys and girls. Good job on the latest update. You've taken a great game and made it even better.
Yeah, and enjoy your break.
So just do something about the part testing.
It's getting closer to Christmas time, and you're really not sure what to get that person. You're like, I just don't know what to get them. Well, podcasts make great gifts.
And they're free.
Whenever they open up their present, get a huge box, fill it full of rocks so it feels heavy. They open it up, and there's a slip of paper inside saying you can download Kerbal Podcast at kerbalpodcast.libsyn.com. And you can email them about how much you enjoyed it at kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. And you can tweet about it at Kerbalcast.
I congratulate you, sir. That is one of the best segues I have ever heard. Because when you started that, I thought, what is he talking about?
But just you wait. This is a gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, because it cleans your house out of relatives.
Yeah, and if you ever want future episodes, you can subscribe to us on iTunes. It's quick, it's easy, and it does it all for you.
It slices, it dices, it chases off your relatives. Okay, again, stick around, if you're interested, stick around. We are going to do after the credits something that I have wanted to do literally since the beginning. If you go back to episode 1, I am literally talking about this. Apollo 8, The anniversary of it is coming up this week, and we are going to talk about this mission, and that is after the credits, and that's coming up next. Until then, I'm your LMP, Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
And we'll talk to you next year, I guess. Happy Kerbaling.
Thanks for sticking around. It's time for After the Credits.
And yes, it is, or as Nos likes to call it,
Kerbal After Dark.
We are recording this After the Credits segment on December the 21st, 2014. And that is significant because 46 years ago today, Apollo 8 launched, left the Earth. It lifted off and went into Earth orbit and then went to the moon.
10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are armed. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
46 years ago, the entire duration of the mission was 6 days, 3 hours, and all the way down to 42 seconds.
Oh wow! Did they really? Yeah. They really had it timed down to that?
Yeah, down to the second.
Oh wow!
They launched December 21st, 1968. The crew was Commander Frank Borman, Command Module Pilot James Lovell, and Lunar Module Pilot William Anders.
Or Jim Lovell and Bill Anders.
Yeah.
It's kind of how those are their formal names.
It took 3 days to travel to the moon, and it orbited 10 times over the course of 20 hours. And the Apollo 8 astronauts returned to Earth on December 27th, 1968.
This, I have been wanting to talk about this literally since the first podcast.
Yeah.
Apollo 8 is one of my, I'm a fan of the entire moon race, the entire, the Mercury and the Gemini and the Apollo programs. Mm-hmm. This is one of my absolute favorite missions. And it is also a mission that I think, sadly, does not get the attention and the recognition that it deserves. Number one, it is the first time that human beings truly left the Earth. I mean, really left the Earth.
Yeah.
We completely left Earth's sphere of influence and we went to another body in space, which was the first time that ever happened.
Yeah, and we did that around 55 hours and 40 minutes in.
Yeah.
The crew of Apollo 8 became the first humans to be in another sphere of influence.
Right. And they did it. This is the other important thing. They did it with one spacecraft. All they had with them was the command module and the service module. The command module is the pod, basically the only part of the entire thing that actually comes back. That entire Saturn V massive rocket that you see sitting on the launch pad, the only part of it that comes back is that tiny little part, that teeny tiny little capsule right at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing out of that entire thing. That's the only thing that returns to Earth. They went to the moon with just the command module and just the service module. And the service module is what has the large engine on it. Okay? They took a real risk by going to the moon because what they had, in essence, was one engine, one life support system. If they had made a loop around the moon and come back to Earth, that would not have been nearly as risky as what they did. What they did was when they got to the moon, they burned that engine, slowed themselves down enough to where the moon captured them, and then they became trapped by lunar gravity. The only way to get out of lunar orbit was to fire that engine. If that engine did not fire, they would have been stuck there. And eventually, all of their resources, their air and everything would have ran out. And until someone could have gone up and gotten them, we would have looked up at the moon and we would have known that there were 3 dead astronauts circling.
Yeah, circling the thing.
I have heard this. I don't know if this is true or not, but I have heard that privately within NASA, they were giving the mission 50-50 odds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the reason they did it, there's a big question as to why. Why did we do this? A couple of factors were in play. Number one, Apollo 8 was originally supposed to be Apollo 9. Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, Bill Anders, they were training for Apollo 9. And the way it was going to work was Apollo 8, which ultimately became Apollo 9, Apollo 8 was going to take the LEM into Earth orbit, and it was going to test it out there, which is what Apollo 9 did.
Mm-hmm.
Apollo 9 was to take the LEM way outside of Earth's orbit, and they were going to test the LEM there. Apollo 10 was going to take the LEM down fairly close to the lunar surface, but not actually land. And then, of course, Apollo 11 was going to land. Well, by the time they got close to the launch window for Apollo 8, the original Apollo 8, the LEM itself was not ready. And they realized that if they didn't do something, they would not launch another Apollo mission until sometime into 1969.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they were doing this was they would every step, and Gemini was like this as well. Every mission was meant to accomplish something new for the first time.
Yeah.
The next mission would take what had been accomplished in the previous mission
and
do that and then do more new stuff. And the idea was we're going to do something, get it right, do something else, get it right, do something. And, we would stair step our way to the moon. If we didn't get off the ground, if we didn't get something, if we didn't get further down the checklist until well into 1969, the odds of us landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth, in the words of President Kennedy, the odds of us accomplishing that became much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided, let's do this trip around the moon. And the other reason they did it was in September of 1968, the Soviet Union had launched a spacecraft, and it had some living creatures. I'm quoting this from the Wikipedia page. Quote, some living creatures, including Russian tortoises. And they made a cislunar loop around the moon. And the thought was they were preparing to do the exact same thing with a crew of cosmonauts.
Yeah.
And of course, this was the big space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. And so what they wanted to do was they wanted to get there first. And instead of doing a loop around the moon and coming back, they wanted to get to the moon and actually get into orbit. And they realized they were taking a real chance here, because they were going to do it with one engine and one life support system.
Yeah.
But they did do it. They launched on December 21st, and as you said, it was a fairly lengthy mission. But they sent them around the moon. When they got to the moon, they burned their engines, and they got locked into lunar orbit. And for the first time in human history, we got to see the moon close up. And I'll let you take it from there.
Okay, so when they're going into lunar orbit, the SPS ignited at 69 hours, 8 minutes, and 16 seconds after launch and burned for 4 minutes and 13 seconds, putting Apollo 8 spacecraft in orbit around the moon. The crew described the burn as being the longest 4 minutes of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I can imagine.
Well, you do. I can imagine that it must be a long 4 minutes, because if you think about it, those 4 minutes are you basically getting rid of, once that burn is complete, you're stuck in lunar orbit.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have absolutely committed yourself.
If it didn't exactly hit the correct amount of time, it could have gone highly elliptical, and they could have been flung way out, outside of both of their influence.
Which, as Kerbal players, that means more to us, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I know exactly what they're talking about.
It's going to be way harder to come back if you could come back at all.
Yeah.
And imagine doing it on one engine.
Yeah.
And then there's the opposite, which could have possibly flung you straight into the moon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is something that we've also experienced.
Yeah. Well, the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, but it does have, it has a sphere of influence.
Yeah, it's got a pull.
So yeah, you can't get too close.
Yeah. So and they orbited it for 20 hours, is how long they did. I think how many revolutions they do?
I think it was
10 times over the
10
course
revolutions.
of 20 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
so each revolution was 2 hours.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
hey, I know basic math.
Which the speed they were going, speed of 3,990 feet per second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, relative to the moon. So after reporting on the status of the spacecraft, Lovell gave the first description of what the lunar surface looked like.
Okay, Houston, the moon is essentially gray. No color. Looks like plaster of Paris. Or sort of a grayish beach sand. We can see quite a bit of detail. The Sea of Fertility doesn't stand out as well here as it does back on Earth. There's not as much contrast between that and the surrounding craters. The craters are all rounded off. There's quite a few of them. Some of them are newer. Many of them look like, especially the round ones, look like hit by meteorites or projectiles of some sort. Langrenus is quite a huge crater. It's got a central cone to it. The walls of the crater are terraced, about 6 or 7 different terraces on the way down.
To me, that had to be amazing.
Oh, yeah.
To be that close, to see that amount of detail.
Yeah, the first to do it, really, too.
Yeah. Have you ever looked at the moon through binoculars?
Like through telescopes? And...
Well, I mean, even binoculars.
Yeah.
It's, you're so used to looking at the moon,
mm-hmm.
and then you take a pair of binoculars or a telescope, and all of a sudden there's all this detail that you never saw.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine being that close to the surface?
Yeah, like looking out of a plane.
Yeah. And the thing that Lovell said that just amazes me was, he said it's essentially gray. You think that when you get close up that there would be more variation in color. And I know that there is to some degree.
Yeah, different hues and stuff.
But there are, there's a book I have, and it's a big, like, coffee table book, but it's called Full Moon. And
mm-hmm.
it's these gigantic pages, and they are prints of pictures that have been taken of the moon by the Apollo astronauts in orbit and on the surface. And there are some pictures in there where you look at them and you do this double take after a few seconds where you realize this picture's in color.
Oh, yeah.
Because you look at it and you go, that's black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden you'll see some detail in there, whether it's an orange reflection off of a rover or, something. And all of a sudden you go, this picture's in color.
Yeah.
But it looks black and white. So the idea of being actually close enough to see that amazes me.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
They made several broadcasts, and the one you just heard was, I believe, the second one they made. My understanding is when they first got into orbit, they were having some problems with filters. And, for example, when they tried to point the camera at the Earth, all they really got was a big white blob on the screen because it wasn't differentiating any shades at all. But probably the most famous broadcast that they made on Apollo 8 occurred on Christmas Eve.
We are now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. And God called the firmament heaven. And the evening and the morning were the second day. God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. God saw that it was good.
I don't know. You know, the idea of hearing that on Christmas Eve, I mean, it still, to this day, gives me chills.
Yeah.
You know, I know you haven't had a chance to watch From the Earth to the Moon yet, but the episode 1968, which I believe was the 4th episode that they did, is about the Apollo 8 mission. And they have a scene in there where the guys are passing the card around that it's the first 10 verses of the book of Genesis. And at the time, it was the most watched TV program ever. But they have a scene where they're passing the card around, and it's like a laminated card, and they've got a little flashlight. And they're handing it from one astronaut to the next, and each one's reading a portion of it and then handing it to the next one. And when I watched that scene in the episode 1968 in From the Earth, I still get chills.
I bet.
Yeah. Which there's an earlier scene in there. There's one of the famous pictures that came out of Apollo 8 is called Earthrise. This is the first time they went around the moon. The Earth rose over the horizon, and they looked up. You know, that had never occurred to anybody that they were going to see that.
Yeah, it was on the 4th pass.
Yeah,
yeah, and it was like the first time in human history that anything like they had witnessed anything like that.
I want to play some audio at this point, and this is 2 different pieces of audio that I've put together. The first comes from the YouTube series that space historian Andrew Chaikin has been doing, and the second is actual mission audio from Apollo 8. And I want you to pay very close attention to, first of all, how surprised the astronauts are, and secondly, how excited they are.
They were coming around from the far side of the moon, and Frank Borman was maneuvering the spacecraft into a new orientation, and Bill Anders, who had been looking at the moon and photographing the moon, now looked out the window and saw the Earth rising beyond this barren lunar horizon, and with the Hasselblad camera and the 250 millimeter telephoto lens, he took first a black and white image and then a couple of color images, one of which became one of the great icons of the 20th century.
Oh my God, look at that picture over there. There's the Earth coming up. Wow, is that pretty. Hey, don't take that, it's not scheduled. You got a color film, Jim? Hand me a roll of color quick.
Oh, man, that's great. Where is it?
Quick.
You know, the impact of seeing the Earth rising beyond that bleached, barren horizon was to emphasize the beauty of the Earth and the fact that it was so utterly different from the world that they were orbiting. The moon, of course, has no atmosphere, no water, no life, and basically looked to the astronauts like a burned-out cinder. And the Earth, of course, is an oasis of beauty and color and life in the void of space. In fact, Jim Lovell later referred to it as a grand oasis in the vastness of space. So on Apollo 8 and on every mission to the moon, it was the sight of the Earth from lunar distance that became the greatest experience, that had the greatest impact of the entire lunar experience.
Take several of them. Here, give it to me. Wait a minute, let's get the right setting here. Calm down, Lovell.
Oh, I got it right. Oh, that's a beautiful shot. Oh, very explosion.
I did. I picked you up.
You sure you got it now?
Yeah, it'll come up again, I think.
They took several pictures. Initially, they took a black and white picture of Earthrise. And then somebody said, let's get the color camera. And so they grabbed it, and they took the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the picture that has been published, both Bill Anders and Jim Lovell swear that they're the ones that took that picture.
Yeah.
And they love to tease each other about, no, I'm the one that took the picture.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back and forth about that. Yeah, but Jim Lovell apparently, when they went around and they saw the Earth rise, apparently he was like freaking out going, take pictures. And one of them finally went, Jim, it's going to come up again, you know. I mean, that really did happen. I mean, they show it in the episode, but I mean, that really truly did happen. As I said earlier, supposedly, privately, NASA gave this a 50-50 chance of success. So they really rolled the dice on this one. Frank Borman's wife, Susan Borman, was so convinced that this mission was going to fail that she actually wrote a letter, kind of an obit, that was meant to accompany the NASA official press release. And this is also in the 1968 episode From the Earth to the Moon. But basically she was saying, he's gone and I know he's gone and but they gave their lives in service of something bigger. But I mean, she was absolutely convinced. Now we get down to the wire, and that is, it's called TEI, Trans-Earth Injection. That one engine had to work. If it didn't work, they were stuck.
Yeah, that was it.
And Kerbal players know this as well. If you want to do any kind of a transfer burn, for example, if you're on Kerbin, okay, and you want to get to the Mun, you've got to burn off to the side of it. In other words, you have to be almost on the other side of Kerbin from the Mun. So that the elliptical orbit that you're creating reaches out and touches the other body. It sets you up to touch at exactly the right time. Okay, so you don't burn parallel to the moon. You burn on the opposite side of Kerbin to get to the Mun. Well, as a result, or similarly, I should say, Apollo 8, when they started their burn, they were on the far side of the moon. So when they did this, they were out of radio contact with Houston. Houston had to sit there for however many minutes waiting to hear from them.
Yeah.
And they knew that, I mean, this is something that amazes me about how smart the people were involved in the Apollo program. They could tell you down to the second things like, okay, at exactly this many hours, this many minutes, this many seconds, at exactly that second, you can look up through the window and you'll see the moon, or you'll see the Earth, or I mean, they could literally tell you these things. I mean, they had it down to the second.
Wow.
And they had it down to the second. They said that, we, past this point, this is the earliest we'll hear from them.
Yeah.
And if we don't hear from them by this point, that means that the engine did not burn properly or at all. And so imagine how happy they were when they heard this.
Apollo 8, Houston.
Apollo 8, over.
Hello, Apollo 8. Loud and clear.
Roger. Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
That's affirmative. You're the best one to know.
And just so you know, the first person you hear is Jim Lovell. He's the one that says, please be informed there's Santa Claus. The person who responds is Ken Mattingly, ironically, from Apollo 13.
Yeah.
He was the one that got scrubbed, remember? And he's the one that says, that's affirmative, you're the best ones to know. But you want to talk about a good Christmas present.
Yeah.
46 years ago, this week, Apollo 8 went around the moon, went into lunar orbit, and then came back. And again, a very significant mission. It is one that I think should get more attention than it does. So keep that in mind over this holiday season. I guess that wraps it up for After the Credits.
That's it.
I'm going to leave you with a couple of closing comments. The first, once again, space historian Andrew Chaikin.
We move forward as a species when we explore. It isn't enough to just go into space and live inside a few modules for 6 months at a time. We've got to be going places and seeing new things and expanding our consciousness and our awareness. That's what Apollo 8 was. It was this absolute turning point in human evolution.
Very good. Okay. Well, we will, as we mentioned earlier, because of the holidays, we're gonna be off this next week. So we'll be back first full week of 2015, and we'll see you then.
All right.
And I didn't forget, by the way, I said that I was going to leave you with a couple of closing comments. The last one, I think, should go to Apollo 8 Mission Commander Frank Borman.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the